Today we're going to be comparing the BaoFeng UV-5R and the AnyTone NSTIG-8R. These are two completely different radios, and we're going to kind of go through both of them today to show what the differences are. So first we're just going to start off with a quick unboxing, what's inside each box. We'll just do them side by side. So we'll open up the AnyTone, the UV-5R box. First you've got the user's manual. You've got a user's manual included with both of them. There's quite a bit of difference. The biggest difference is this one was not written in the USA, and this one was written in the USA, so you've got quite a bit more tips, more handling to the NSTIG-8R than you would have on the basic UV-5R manual. And you'll just see side by side, that's a difference right off the bat. The next, you'll see you've got a UV-5R Plus here. You're going to have a battery. The BaoFeng batteries, they're all labeled at 1800 milliamp, but they're actually 1500 milliamp batteries that are now included with them. And so that's the differences right there. It's a UV-5R Plus is what's inside this kit. With the NSTIG-8R, you've got an 1800 milliamp battery, and we're just going to slide that on the back right there. And so those are the two radios right off the bat. We'll get back to these a little bit later. Next, you've got a belt clip on the UV-5R. It's already attached here on the NSTIG-8R, but that's the differences. We'll look at that again later. I'm going to go down to the second tray on the UV-5R. We've got the earpieces right out of the box again. The earpieces, you've got a different build quality. What's included all around on the NSTIG-8R versus the UV-5R. You do have right here, you've got more of a plastic earpiece, and the one with the NSTIG-8R is a corded earpiece. Both have a soft foam covering on the earpiece, whether you use those or not. We'll look at the buttons. Alright, that's the earpieces. Next, we'll be moving on to the antenna. This is just the A5R antenna, and this is the antenna that's included with the NSTIG-8R here. They look similar. They do perform differently, but they're a very similar look. You'll see the threads are much longer on the AnyTone antenna there. We'll get back to those later too. And then finally, we've got the charger in both boxes. We've got the AnyTone, we've got the BaoFeng chargers there, and we've got their AC-DC transformers. Alright, now we'll take a look at the radios. We'll get them put together and start looking at the differences of the radios. We've got the AnyTone NSTIG-8R assembled and the UV-5R assembled. We'll look at a couple of the differences. You'll see on the NSTIG-8R, you've got 4 side key options. These 2 lower side keys are programmable. You've got a bunch of options on the user's menu, and you can also do it right on the software. On the BaoFeng, you've got 3 buttons, and these are factory set for what their options are. One of the highlights of the NSTIG-8R of the options is you can do the dual push-to-talk, where you can make one of these side keys your secondary push-to-talk. So if you're monitoring 2 frequencies, you can reply to both of them using your main push-to-talk and then your secondary push-to-talk. That way you don't have to be switching through which channel to talk on. You'll know which one right from there. On the belt clips, you'll see there's the spring-loaded belt clip on the UV-5R. This is a fixed belt clip on the NSTIG-8R. It's a real solid metal clip. Then on the side accessory jack, you've got the same Kenwood 2-pin accessory slot on both radios. We're going to power on the radios and look at some of the differences now with the radios turned on. One of the biggest differences from the Instigator and the UV-5R that you won't be able to see too well in this video is the speaker and mic on the Instigator are a lot higher quality. They're a lot louder, a lot crisper. They don't have as much audio distortion as the UV-5R carries. It's a 1 watt speaker in the Instigator. It's a 700 milliwatt speaker in the UV-5R. The mic on the Instigator, it's going to transmit a lot cleaner, crisper audio than what's transmitted on the UV-5R. And that's one of the biggest differences in your hand you would be able to see between the two radios. The next difference we're going to look at is on the UV-5R. When you're switching from channel in frequency mode, you would just simply hit the VFO button here, and the change is synchronized on the upper and lower VFO, so they're either both on channel mode or they're both on frequency mode. On the Instigator, you can do that change independent from the two VFOs. So if you switch to frequency mode, you can just do it on that upper VFO, or you could just do it on the lower VFO. The dual VFOs are independent of each other, so that gives you a few more options when you're out in the field and you want to have both frequency and channel modes going simultaneously. You can do that on the Instigator. The Instigator can store 200 channels. The UV-5R can store 128. So you get 72 more channels you can store in the Instigator. If you've got a big repeater list, that might come in handy on the Instigator. The next difference you have between the two radios is the incoming calls and what it does to the LED. This is a small convenience perk, we'll call it, but on this LED on top of the radio of the Instigator, the LED right here on the bottom of the UV-5R, they act differently to incoming calls. On the Instigator, you'll get a different LED color depending on the VFO that's being activated. On the UV-5R, it's always going to income as green. So what that means is if this was in your pocket and you missed who was calling in, you would be able just to look down at that LED light and see which VFO was being activated without actually having to pull out the radio and look for a flashing arrow. So that's it's a little convenience perk. We're going to do it right now. We've got the two channels on both radios, and I'm going to activate the channel called repeat on both radios, and this should come in as green on both radios. Alright, it came in on green on both radios, and you know you were on the upper VFO on this radio. Now I'm going to activate the channel called private, and on this channel it should light up blue on the Instigator. On the UV-5R it's still going to come in as green. And so you saw it lit up as blue. We're just going to cycle those two modes and show you the two colors if you were looking down, and if it was in your belt you would be able to see who was calling in if you missed that incoming call, who was calling. It's a little convenience perk. Another smaller convenience perk, but it really can do a lot if you're out in the field, is if you're scanning channels and there's a surprise nuisance channel. If there's a channel that's being used a lot that day and you don't want your scanning to keep stopping for that channel, on the Instigator you can skip scanning right from the keypad. You can just hit the function key, then skip, and it's gonna put an S on the display and skip that channel during scanning. On the UV-5R, if you're familiar with them, the only way to skip a channel during scanning is to set it up that way from software. And you would normally do that for NOAA weather channel, a common channel you would skip, but sometimes you don't know if there's going to be a nuisance channel and you're out and about and you want to skip that channel during scanning. Well, you can do it on the Instigator. The only way you could do it on the UV-5R would be to completely delete that channel while you're out and about, and that's not always convenient if you got to be deleting channels to add them in later. So another convenience perk that's on the Instigator. Another thing the Instigator can do, the Instigator has quite a bit more functions, features than the UV-5R, and they come from one main feature, and that's this. It's through DTMF tones, those keypad tones on the radio. Both radios can actually send DTMF tones. That's not the difference. What the difference is, on the AnyTone Instigator, you can actually receive DTMF tones and do something with what's received. A variety of options. So to give a couple examples, what the Instigator can do is it can receive a kill command, a stun command. What that means is you've got a program from software that a certain keypad sequence, we'll say 1, 2, 3, 4, if it was keyed on the radio, that would be a command for the Instigator to go, we'll say, into kill mode. And in kill mode, it can no longer transmit or receive frequencies. If you turn off the radio, turn it back on, you can't do anything, you can't do a factory reset. That radio is disabled until you send the revive keypad sequence. In the stun mode, if you were to do that, all it would do is disable the transmitting capability of the radio. And so those features, that is because the radio is activated by DTMF tones. So you could use any radio to send those tones, but only the Instigator could actually do something from it. What else you can do from it? DTMF tones in the commercial fields are used sometimes for push-to-talk IDs. If you've ever heard those keypad beeps coming in very quickly, like on your UV-5R, what that is commercial applications using them as a push-to-talk ID. Now, if you were to actually receive those push-to-talk IDs, you cannot do it on the UV-5R. It can only hear the beeps, but it can't do anything with it. On the Instigator through software, you can set up your caller ID, your ANI list, and with certain beeps coming in, it would receive them and it would display the name on the radio who was calling in. That's all because it can receive or decode those incoming tones. Another difference with the DTMF tones that's all enabled because you can receive them is you can set your squelch by DTMF. So that means along with CTCSS, DCS, you can add into the mix DTMF to activate to open the squelch. And so the squelch options on the radio, you can set your squelch by carrier. You can set your squelch by a CTCSS or a DCS tone. You can set it to only open for a DTMF tone. You can set it to open from a CTCSS and a DTMF tone, or the last option, CTCSS or DTMF. So there's a lot of flexibility, a lot of options when you're out and you've got you want to do something special with your frequency. If you're a commercial business and you want to have some kind of DTMF push-to-talk ID to open the squelch, for whatever reason, you've got a lot more options that's added onto the AnyTone series radios. And most of that DTMF options, most of those are going to be set up by software, what your push-to-talk ID would be, and how it's going to receive commands, what those commands are. That a lot of those are in software. And now we're going to get back to what the radio can do on the fly. On the fly programming on the Instigator is a lot easier than what's compared to the UV-5R. And there's just little thoughtful perks. Once again, that's in the Instigator, that's not in the UV-5R. One of those is when you're setting up tones, it's not uncommon to have the exact same transmit and receive tone, synchronized tones. And so on the AnyTone, you can set up a receive tone, you can set up a transmit tone, just like you could on the UV-5R. But if your repeater has the exact incoming tone, exact same DCS, exact same CTCSS tone, on the instigator, the option 3 in the menu is your synchronized CTCSS or DCS tone. So you can just go through and just set it once, and it's going to set up as your incoming and outgoing CTCSS tones. If you've got your squelch to open from an incoming tone, it makes it a little bit more convenient that way. Another feature when you're programming on the radio, you can actually set the channel names on the instigator. If you're familiar with the UV-5R, you know the only way you can set channel names is through the software. You got to plug in the radio, set the names on the software, and that's the only way you can give an alphanumeric name. On the AnyTone instigator, you can actually give a name right on the keypad itself. You can actually go through, you can set up a name, scroll through characters, and you would be able to give a full channel name right on the radio itself. And so that's a nice little convenience perk there as well. Feature-wise, the receiver in the instigator is a lot more advanced, and probably the biggest difference between these two receiver chipsets is when you transmit in narrowband. Both radios can do that. If you're in a commercial application, you have to be in narrowband here in the USA. On the instigator, it can not only transmit in narrowband, but it actually receives in narrowband. And that means a world of a difference when you've got both of these set up for commercial applications. And you've got, you're in a city, you're receiving a lot of intermod, you're receiving a lot of garbage on the airwaves. That narrowband's going to filter that out just to begin with. The UV-5Rs are a little bit looser, and they cannot receive in true narrowband. They can transmit, they can comply that way, but when they receive, they've got that loose wideband squelch. So that's a big difference between the two receivers. You've got a lot better receiver when you can set the instigator to receive in true narrowband. When you make a channel change on the instigator, you can actually do that. If you're familiar with the UV-5Rs, you're aware that once you set a channel, the incoming, the outgoing tones, however you've set up your squelch, once you set those changes, that's a permanent setting. The only way you can change that setting is if you set it up again by computer software, or if on the keypad itself, you delete the channel and you start over from scratch. The AnyTones, they allow a little bit more grace. What that means is on the AnyTones, if you were to make a change, if you wanted to change your offset, if you wanted to change your squelch to no longer set a squelch by carrier, if you wanted to change it to a tone, you can do that, and it's going to be a temporary change to that channel. It's going to remember the change as you're going in between frequency in the channel modes on the it's going to remember that change. But when you power off and power back on the radio, it's going to reset it to that hard programmed channel. And so when you make changes, they're only temporary, and normally that's what you want to do. You just want to make an exception for a channel for a certain squelch level, whatever it may be. You can do that on the instigator. On the UV-5R, if you were to make a small change, you cannot do that. Once it's programmed, it's always set that way. You can, on the instigator, you can change a small value, run with it that way until you power it off and power back on the radio, in which it's going to reset to that hard programmed mode. Now, on the UV-5Rs and on the instigators, you've got a lot more software options you can do on the instigator and how you set up the radio. You can set up the radio. I can show you the boot menu right here, but you can actually lock these out. But you can set up the radio to lock out or to lock into a channel mode. So if you were to be Part 90 compliance for a business, you wanted to disable that VFO, the frequency mode, completely, you cannot do that on the UV-5R. You can't do that on any BaoFeng except the UV-82C. On the Instigator, you can set up your channel mode, and you can set it up into that business channel mode in which it's locked down. And now that I've just activated this on the radio, I actually cannot change it. The only way I can change this on the radio now is going to be through the software. What you can do, and that's because on the software right now it's set up to lock it down once I put it into that channel, or the professional mode as they would call it. You can lock down menus, you can lock down a variety of options on the Instigator, so you can hand these out at events if you got commercial frequencies, and you can use your commercial frequency and hand them out to unlicensed volunteers. You cannot do that with the UV-5R with the BaoFengs. They have access to the frequencies, and there's no way you can restrict that access. The only radio that can do that in the BaoFengs is a UV-82C. So even if they say they're Part 90 stickered, they have to disable that access. They have to disable that access to allow you to use them in a commercial setting when you're giving them out to unlicensed people. The BaoFeng cannot do that. Whatever you might do, you've got a lot more flexibility with the Instigator, and if you're deciding between the two, and if you can afford the Instigator, you're going to get a lot more radio for about $20 more. When you're comparing the BaoFengs, they're a good budget-friendly radio, but you're going to get a lot more radio per dollar when you go with an Instigator. It's just a lot better radio. Hands down, the programmable side keys, it's a better radio when compared to the 5R.